Hey, this is Seagrove, and we are back with a second metaphor cast of the season, Peoria, and we have some excellent guests today. As always, we'll start with Alex. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us where to find you, any coaching or anything like that you want to shout out. Go ahead and do that.
Sure. I'm Alex Schemanske. You can find me on Twitter at @Schemanske. I write articles for myself over at Substack. You can find the link in my Twitter. I coach on and off of Medify, and I'm sponsored by the Shuffle Squad. Go check them out.
I don't know what Substack is, but I follow you on that. So
I'm subscribed.
I'm subscribed, I guess, or whatever it's called. Piper.
I'm Piper. You can follow me at Piper Lepine on Twitter. I think in my bio there's stuff for coaching there. I'm sponsored by Dead Raw Gaming, and I write articles on Cutter Tap.
Nice. Zach.
Yo, I'm Zach Lesage. You can find me at Twitter at Zach Lesage PDCG. I offer coaching on Medify, medify.gg/@ZachLesage. And I also write articles, but those are on the Shuffle Squad. Check out the Shuffle Squad. Also sponsored by the Shuffle Squad. Check out the Shuffle Squad.
Nice. Jesse, go ahead.
Hey, my name's Jesse Parker. You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Parker without the A in the Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I make tweets sometimes. I don't do coaching, so don't message me about coaching because I will ignore you.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to hop right into some questions. First thing I want to talk about is Charizard. It had not much showing at all in Pittsburgh. And then I think it was a lost Charizard EX that made top 8 in Europe. And then in Brazil, there were, I think, 5 Charizard EX decks in top 8, which was mostly there was a couple Arc Zard Pidgeots, but mostly just Zard Pidgeot. So I want you all to go around and tell me which is your favorite Zard and how you think it's going to be for Peoria. So, Alex, you can start this as well. What's your favorite version of Charizard right now?
My favorite one's probably the Arvin Pidgeot one with no Arceus. It got marginally better for Peoria, so it probably will do well, and people will play it because people like to play Charizard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You say it got marginally better. You mean better than it was pre-151?
Yeah, it gets a 70 HP Charmander. It improves its Lost Box matchup slightly.
Okay, nice. Piper, do you agree?
About the call for Family Pidge.
And the call for Family Pidge.
Don't play that.
What?
Yeah. No, because then they can.
Your whole
there's no reason to play 70 HP.
I don't care. I want to search my deck for two basic Pokemon. That's so good.
So the idea
it's called Arvin
well enough, without it. Yeah.
All right. Fine.
So the idea is
at the end of the turn anyway.
So the idea is 50 and 70 is still 120. Is that the problem?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Piper, what's your favorite version?
My favorite version is one of the one prize versions. You're able to force your opponent into weird prize mapping, which prevents them from not going down to one prize and preventing you from hitting the 330 mark, which can be kind of annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Lost Box one a bit more right now, just because you have early game Cramorant to poke at stuff, and then that allows you to, when you're only doing 180 or 210, pick up KOs, and then you have Sableye to clean up any earlier 210, 240, etc., or set up math for the late game. But
yeah. Cool. Zach, did you take yours?
I haven't gone yet, but I also like the Arvin Pidgeot version. Just because I'm able to I feel like Arvin's just such a good card, the same way that Irida is played in water type decks. Mm-hmm. We don't really have a fire type Irida, and this is kind of the closest thing that we have. Seems good. I've tried all the versions so far, because I think most players started off with the Arceus version, and then the Lost Zard version came out, and I think that the Arvin version is the one that really kind of broke through and saw that success. I'm okay in the early games not to really let my opponent, like, I'm not too worried about poking things. Like, it's nice to attack with Cramorant for sure when it comes to the Lost Zone box. I'd rather than just like knock out my Pokemon and then I can kind of force them into situations where I can take other knockouts, so you kind of leverage it as the game progresses. But it's a pretty cool deck.
Okay. I thought you were going to say the same thing, Lost Zard, because you'd written about that a while back. Jesse, what was your favorite version?
Yeah, I think the newest version to come out of Curitiba, I think it's how you say it, with the 4 Arvin and no Arceus is definitely my favorite, and I think it's the best just because of like the raw consistency of the deck. I think that's like was always my issue with Charizard in the past, was like the consistency factor, and
Yeah.
I think the Arvin just gives you like very very consistent, like especially when you go second, just turn 2s, and now that you get the better Charmanders, I think obviously, like Alex was saying, it gets even better. So yeah, just like you set up a really really strong board state that's like really hard for your opponent to deal with, just like kind of like how Arceus decks were in the past, just like really like it's just like a big stat check deck, and you just kind of like are kind of forced to play into it, or forced or try to counter it with like things like Path, or just being like fast aggressive, but even that doesn't always work. So yeah, I like this Arvin version of Charizard a lot. It just flows really well. It deals with Path pretty decently, having like multiple vacuum and Arvin to search out the vacuum, if you don't have the raw stadium in your hand. So yeah, I like this Arvin Zard is what I've been calling it. I like that the best out of the 3 versions, I think, or 4. I guess there's 4 different versions technically. Yeah, I like that Arvin version the best for sure.
Sure. So we have 151 legal for the first time. Are there any new archetypes that people need to be looking out for from 151, like completely new things like Arbok or anything like that people need to be on players' radars? Zach, what do you think?
I mean, Arbok's a cool card. I don't know if it's necessarily like a new archetype. I do think that there's a lot of control element cards that came out, so we could see a resurgence in control to some degree, beyond just like Charizard getting even better with Charmander, because it's probably the deck that got the biggest spec bump. We could see Blastoise EX is probably the closest thing that we have to a new variant, and that's seen like 0 success online, 0 play. So I mean, I think that our metagame's more or less exactly the same, plus Charmander, plus some people running Pidgey. That's up for debate on everyone. And then Mew EX is probably the big card from the set that are either going to be included or not included. But that does shift the metagame enough that some decks feel slightly new. I guess like if we look at it from a complete standpoint, Colorless Lugia didn't really exist before. Like it did, but it was kind of forgotten about, and it came back with Mew EX.
Yeah.
So I think like that might be new to someone if someone's like played at Pittsburgh, took a break, and is playing at Peoria. That would be a big change in the metagame.
Speaking of that, Piper, you played some Lugia in the past. Do you think Colorless Lugia is now better than Single Strike?
I think it like really just depends on your meta that you're expecting. Like overall, I think Single Strike's still just better, but if it's gonna be like a ton of Charizard, like if I were in like top 8 or something and looking at my metas and it was like the Curitiba top 8, I would be wanting to play Colorless because I think it has like a slightly better matchup into Zard because you can one shot with Weirdeer. And since you're playing like 2 to 3 Snorlaxes, you can just wipe your board of 1 prizers, of 2 prizers, and force them to go down to 1 prize, and then you can copy their Charizard for 330. Like, there's just some weird things you can do. Whereas I think Single Strike, if Zard sets up, there's not a ton you can do to win the game.
Okay, and this is for both of you. I know you both have played Lugia recently. Do you think if Single Strike's better, could I just play a counter to Charizard in it? Could I put Cobalion? Could I put I think some people were playing Breloom, but I don't think that's too good. I don't know, but if Single Strike's better, could we just play that with the Char counter? Sorry?
Like, I don't think that really does anything. I mean, you can cut cards to find room for that. Like, I feel like Lugia, you'd just rather be playing like extra consistency. Like I'd rather play like 4 research and 3 Iono than like cut that or find space for uh the Cobalion. I forgot. But yeah,
What? And Zach, do you think single strike or colorless is better right now?
I think it's really metagame dependent. I actually don't really like colorless Lugia into Charizard. I like single strike more because you can run Cobalion. Um, I mean, you have the ability to OHKO Zard. So basically, if you go knock out something, a single prizer, knock out a single prizer, knock out a two prizer, then knock out a Zard, that's enough for you to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
6 prize cards. I struggled a little bit if Zard's able to set up it pretty consistently with colorless. So I do like Cobalion. I mean, I think right now, like the metagame's probably too big. Like, if anyone thinks that they could fully predict a regionals at Peoria or something with 1,500 players, you're literally at the mercy of Tom. I mean, I can't even like I could predict the metagame for my local league cups. That doesn't mean that I'm hitting the right matchups that I want. So I think either one's a fine play going forward. It really just depends on like the tail of Tom. Did you play single strike with Cobalion and hit a bunch of Charizards, or did you hit everything else and other Lugias with colorless Lugia?
Right. Jesse, changes do you see in the meta with 151?
Mew EX mostly. I mean, there are like little things here and there. Obviously, like we talked about, the Charizard deck getting some arguably better little guys in the Pidgey and the Charmander. But yeah, Mew EX just kind of adds. I kind of like it's kind of refreshing. Like I said, with the Scarlet Violet sets, it feels like not every set we're getting some new broken deck, like a new Lugia or a new Arceus. It's nice that like Mew, we're just getting like a card that like a new tech card for some decks,
Mm-hmm.
but it's such a strong tech card for decks like the Lugia that like it really like shapes kind of like it'll shape the meta for sure. I mean, I think Giratina in general just I don't think Giratina is necessarily bad, but it just gets it's a little more risky to play a card like that because
Right.
your opponent could just throw a Mew down and copy Lost Impact. It also is just some decks will just use it as a free retreat pivot and a draw up to 3 from when they get Ionoed. So I think the card is just like really really strong, and I don't know how many decks will actually play it because at the end of the day it is still like a 2 prize liability on your board, and so many decks that you kind of have to like take any little advantage you can get, and sometimes just setting up a lot of decks right now just need to set up like Lugia, like a full single prize board and not leave any liabilities in play. But there's little things like that. But yeah, I don't think a whole lot changes. But Mew EX getting thrown into the mix definitely will throw some decks for a loop, and something you got to consider and think about whether you want to include it in your deck or not.
Are Mew and Zapdos good in Miraidon?
I don't think Zapdos is that great at all, personally. Zapdos EX. It is a new, if you don't know, Zapdos EX is a new lightning type EX that has an attack for 3 lightning that does 120 to their active, and then if you can do 90 to a bench Pokemon that has damage counters on it. So the issue is you have to play the Hawlucha in your deck to be able to put damage on their bench, which is just, for starters, it's 2 slots in your deck, and lists are really tight as it is. And it is very strong when you can pull it off. Now, I still have a little more testing to do because now I'm Peoria, so who knows? Maybe it'll be a card that like is included in Miraidon, but like I don't know, because I haven't been playing a whole lot of Miraidon lately. I've been like focusing on other decks, but yeah, I mean it showed up at the the Yokohama 3,000 person event. I mean, winning a 3,000 person event is nothing to scoff at. But then at the end of the day, in Japan it is best of 1, so it might just be like a best of 1 meme card where you get it out, like your opponent doesn't know you play it, and you just pop it out, take your 2 prizes, and win that game. But in a best of 3, if you show that to your opponent in game 1, they're gonna be able to play around it in the next game. But who knows? I mean, it's something that decks will have to consider because it is just a card you can just pop out of nowhere and fire off like out of nowhere. Technically, I mean, even as soon as turn 1 going second, technically you can pull it off turn 1 going second.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a cool card, and I don't, who knows, maybe it is good, but I haven't been impressed by it so far because I feel like it's not going to happen in enough games to justify the 2 spots. But it is a cool new card that Miraidon gets access to, along with the Mew EX. Being able to Dynamotor to the Mew EX is like a way to power it up. So Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's the best card in Miraidon, but it is definitely a cool option to have.
Mhm. Alex, any thoughts on 151 shakeups?
I mean, things shift a bit. Like, obviously, MUEX changes a few things, but I think like the biggest change is people might be more scared to play things like Lost Tina. But really, I think it's just more of what we see. Probably more Charizard than we saw in Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
but that was a few events ago. But it's the American meta for us. I think Charizard's more represented, but that's just a result of people finding better lists.
Yeah.
Not 151.
Yeah.
So before Mew, I was thinking Rapid Strike might be the play for this tournament. It seemed like it was going to be really good. Does Rapid Strike get kind of killed by Mew EX, Alex?
No, I mean, Mew doesn't kill Urshifu. Like, you can attack Urshifu and not kill it. And maybe you rapid flowed my artillery, but oh well. Like, obviously it can impact it, but it's still just a 180 HP basic that
Right.
exists in play. If you're playing something like Choice Belt, sure, like then yes, it impacts matchups more. It provides a Miraidon with the resistance pivot, but it changes percentages. It doesn't swing matchups though.
Okay. Cool. Piper, I don't think I ever asked you directly. Any 151 shakeup you want to talk about?
I think if you're planning on playing Tina, Mew shouldn't scare you too much. If you just put a Lost Origin Snorlax in your deck, I think your opponent playing Mew actually benefits you a lot. It's just a free 2 prizes. Yeah, I don't know. I think Mew EX is better for the free retreat and ability than the actual attack. Most decks, like, unless you're playing Guardy or, like, Lost Box or something that can power it up in one turn easily, they'll see it coming, like, pretty far away. Like, if you're playing Rhydon, you have to have 2 Flaffy to get it in one turn, and against some matchups, you'd never want to do that. Like, if you're playing against Lost Box, you just lose to your Radiant Greninja then, but I think it's just, like, not great in best of 3 in general, because, like, even if you pull it off in game 1, then, like, your opponent just knows about it games 2 and 3. I don't know. It just... I used to think the card was really good, and now I think it's kind of mid.
Okay. Let's say, or Jesse, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say one thing I forgot, like mention about Mew EX is that I don't think anybody said yet. It doesn't come up very often, but it is kind of interesting that it can copy things like Radiant Greninja. So there have been like a couple games in my testing where it comes up, where it's like I'm playing it in colorless Lugia and they have it just comes up, you play a lot of Gust and Lugia now, and then they have a Greninja on the bench and no Manaphy, and it's like, oh, I can Gust Greninja and take a free 2 prizes by copying Moonlight Shuriken. So that stuff doesn't come up as much as you would think, but it is just cool that you have that option with the card along with the insane ability and free retreat. So it's just got a lot going for it, that card in general. So that's another thing I think you could see come up a lot, and something you should definitely be thinking about if you think your opponent has Mew. Like, maybe if you can afford it, maybe just slam that Manaphy down, if you can get it on your bench, because you don't want to lose to Curlia.
That was actually going to be my next question. Do people need to fear Greninja, playing Greninja themselves because of Mew? Is that something people need to be looking out for? Or is it fine to play your Greninja? Piper, what do you think?
I think it's fine to play your Greninja. Most decks, it's, like, not super easy for them to, like... It kind of depends on the state of, like, the point of the game. Like, early game, it's a bit scarier, but at the same time, it's not, because it's a lot harder for them to find boss, but you're also still, like, trying to set up with something like Guardy. But, like, if you have an Arcana Guardian play, then it's, like, fine to bench if you need to, like, dig for, like, to hit a reversal or something, because at that point, then they're playing down the 180 HP 2 prizer that you can respond to the 1 prizer.
Right.
And if you get ahead in the prize trade as Guardy, you're probably just winning the game. Like, but yeah. I wouldn't be too scared of it overall.
Zach, what do you think about Greninja?
I mean, I think it's all right. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I've seen it. You have to discard some energies. A lot of the decks can only play Mew because they can accelerate energies, so it's fine. Again, like, Mew's a threat. On, like, it's a threat on both sides. Like, I don't know. it's either good or it's a liability. I don't know how I feel about Mew. I take it in and out of decks all the time. I just bought 5 Mew EX yesterday, so if that gives any like, I also build all my decks 100% without any proxies now. So I don't know what to say about it. I'll decide Thursday or Friday night if I want to play it.
All right, so we've had 4 majors recently, one from Latin America, one from Europe, one from Japan, and one from the US. If you had to play one of the winning decks, so that would be Miraidon, Turbo Lost Box, Rapid Strike, or Charizard Pidgeot. You have to play one of those 4 at Peoria. Which one would you pick? Alex, why don't you start?
Am I playing those 60s or just the archetype?
The archetype.
Then Lost Box.
Okay. Piper, what would you pick?
Probably also Lost Box.
Okay. Jesse.
Gotta go with the Miraidon. Come on, let's go. Woo! Zapdos EX turn 1, going second, baby. Let's
Easy
go.
dub. Zach, what would you pick?
I'd be stuck between Charizard or Lost Zone Box, but probably play Lost Zone Box.
Okay. Cool. So I saw a tweet that I wanted to ask you all about. I think it was Robin Schultz. He said a lot of decks are fine or prefer to go second. That seemed wrong to me. So I wanted to see if any of you all could give me some insight onto which decks. Like, I think of Miraidon as one that doesn't mind going second. But usually if it has the option, it's picking to go first, right? Maybe Lost Box Mirror or something like that. Is there anything other than those 2 that likes to go second or doesn't mind to go second? Anybody can just shout out.
I think for a lot of matchups, Rapid Strike doesn't care if it goes second because your odds of not just dying to 6 bad cards are a lot higher. What else is there?
So would you choose second?
I think he's not wrong. Like, a lot of decks in format just can function perfectly well, like unless it's an evolving stage 2 deck.
Yeah.
I guess Lugia shaky, but
I think even Guardian is like fine going second a lot of times because you just have like awkward hands and then you're like more consistently able to set up. I think it's just like decks that are like spamming multi-prizers. Besides, like, I think Lugia is the big one. If you're spamming multi-prizers and cannot attack on turn 1, you do not want to go second.
Mm-hmm.
But like other than that, like Fusion Mew is fine going second. Like you prefer to go first, but you can always just donk your opponent going second. Like
Pidgeot Arczard kind of seems like that. Or sorry, Pidgeot Intezard kind of seems like that as well, where it's like a lot of times if I go first, I just have a supporter and a basic, and I'm just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and that deck doesn't really care. Like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I was talking to one of my locals about this recently, actually, because he was like, oh, man, if I go first, I win. If I don't, like, he was, like, very head on, like, oh, I need to go first. And it's like, I tried to explain to him, it's like, going second, like, is not that, especially now, it doesn't feel like that horrible, because, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone first, just had, like, benched one Pokemon and, like, just passed, you know? I mean, there's something to be said about being able to play a supporter on your first turn is, like, really nice. Especially a lot of decks like the Arvinzard, like I actually I played Arvinzard and I knew my opponent was playing Miraidon and I actually chose to go second because like I feel like the only way I lose this game is if I go first and to have a subpar turn 1 and then they just blow me up. So it's like and then there's a lot of obviously for any meta there'll be a lot of matchup specific things like maybe the Lost Box Mirror, it's correct to go second or something like that, or Miraidon versus Lost Box going second sometimes is better, but yeah, the going sec is definitely doesn't feel bad right now. There is a like you guys have said, there's a lot of decks that can attack going second. All Lost Box decks for the most part, Fusion Mew, Miraidon, a lot of decks can attack on the first turn and start putting on pressure right away. So going second doesn't feel bad. It is obviously usually correct to go first, but nowadays in the meta, I'm never mad when I have to go second. It's like it's fine.
Yeah, something else.
I sometimes like losing the coin flip.
Yeah, because then I have to decide. Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Because like
Yeah.
a lot of the times I'm like, will I have a supporter? Will I not have a supporter? Will I like? Yeah, it really depends. I think Lugia and Chen Power are probably only really the two decks that want to attack immediately and have to go through that whole evolution process. So
Piper, what were you gonna say?
I think right now going second is a lot better if you're playing like only 70 HP basics. Because the big fear about going second against like decks like Lost Box is like they have a solid turn one, get 3 in the Lost Zone or something, and then the next turn they get the turn 2 Sableye, and then they're able to just like start wiping your board. So I think now that Zard has the 70 HP Charmander, that's like a lot less of a fear. So going second feels a lot better. And I also think with Guardy, you should just be playing 4 70 HP Raltzes right now. But yeah.
Amen. I hate that 60 HP one. It lost me too many games. I just took it out.
Yo, the Vulpixes are gonna show up, and you're gonna regret that.
I've heard a lot of
I mean-
Vulpix hype.
Yeah, it would really suck if I played Mew EX.
Oh, okay, you play VRX.
Um,
That doesn't solve
Okay.
it, but okay.
what's this Vulpix
Cresselia,
hype?
Cresselia Mew EX.
Go ahead.
Just like Arc Vulpix.
Which one of
stuff.
us?
It's Arc Vulpix again.
I heard a lot of just like arc picks, yeah.
I blame you.
I did post an Art Durapix deck on my Twitter last night, along with another few things that, yeah, I mean, just YOLO with it. Just play Art Dur, everyone.
Hey, you know
try
what's-
to not...
What's
What could
funny
go
about that? What's funny about that is I was thinking about Duraludon a little bit myself, just in Vulpix, and it's like Mew EX can copy both those attacks to hit through it, but then like you lose your Mew at least like
Yeah.
like against say like Lugia, you know, they play the one Mew EX and then they don't have any recovery. So like if you hit and then you just KO the Mew EX and it's like, oh, okay, well now you can't damage me anymore, you know. So I don't know, it's just funny. That's another thing where Mew EX kind of like is making everybody thinks twice about some of the cards they're playing, because it's like, oh, they can copy like against like control, like the Mimikyu that you know, can't take damage from V's and EXs. You can copy its attack that does 70 damage. It places 70 damage counters, or 7 damage counters, which isn't damage. Its ability specifies damage. So Mew EX can copy Mimikyu to KO the Mimikyu. So it's just funny how Mew EX just like, you have to think about it like at all those little situations now. It's just kind of funny.
What is the most underrated deck currently in the meta? Jesse, you start.
Ooh, I gotta start. Let's see. The most underrated deck. I mean, I think everybody's gonna underestimate Mew yet again for another event.
It keeps happening, doesn't it?
So honestly, I'd say probably Fusion Mew, or just Mew in general. I don't even think DTE Mew is that bad against Charizard, because like Judge Path just ruins their day. That can just win you games on the spot. So yeah, I guess I'll go with Mew. Honestly, I think it's a deck that like I mean, I think this is definitely gonna, if this event of any events, it's good, people are gonna be taking out, you know, their Drapions, or, you know, I think Spiritomb could still be in decks just because it's also very good against Lugia, and Lugia is generating a lot of hype right now, the colorless build. So yeah, I guess I'll go with Fusion Mew, or just Mew in general.
Piper, what's the most underrated deck?
I think Charizard Glade is actually really good. A lot of like with the I feel like the development of Charizard list has like gone so quickly, like from Pittsburgh to Barcelona to the Brazil event, like that people kind of just looked over it. You have like I really like it going into Peoria specifically because I feel like Zard is on a lot of people's radars, and one of the like better ways to counter the Arvin Pidgeot Zard is like just pathing them, or like Judge Path, Iona Path, because like they don't really thin that much. They're also
Right.
playing like with really low hand sizes a lot of the games, so it's really hard for them to like build combos in general. So Path just like shuts them down. So like by playing the Curly Galate engine, you're just finding the pieces you need. And like Path, besides the early turns, doesn't really affect you too much, which is really nice.
Zach, what's the most underrated deck?
I'm gonna go with Chen Pao Excalibur. I think that it's arguably in the best position that it's been since the deck was created. It's one of the only few decks that can knock out a Charizard EX and also hold its own against Lugia. And I mean, I think a lot of quality players are probably not going to be playing Lost Zone Box just because the metagame, the way that I feel like it's kind of going right now. So I also think that if you're playing against weaker players playing Lost Zone Box by default, Chen Pao can probably hold its own against those. It might be a little bit of cope there, but at the same time, if you're good against Charizard, Lugia, and can hold your own against most of their decks, I really think the build that Kieran, Vera, and Lucas Zing play between Worlds and Pittsburgh is very good.
Is that the turbo one?
The one that plays 4 Pokestops.
Yeah.
So that one's pretty good. Overall, I don't have MewEX in that list right now. I don't think you need it either. Although Restart is a nice ability. I keep on thinking about that.
Alex, what's the most underrated deck?
I kind of think it's Gardevoir. I like at this point in the meta, people just keep it. Like, I feel like people are ignoring it. Like we're all focusing on Charizard, Miraidon, Colorless Lugia. Like I feel like Gardevoir could just come out of nowhere, like with good players playing it, and just run the event.
How is Gardevoir's matchup in the colorless Lugia? I know it has a good Charizard matchup, a good Miraidon matchup.
Honestly, I don't know. I refuse to play either of those decks.
Does anybody have insight into that? Guardy
Yeah,
versus Lugia?
I actually
It's
don't.
very
Not sure.
list dependent. My testing is from like early Paldea Evolved, but
Right.
basically like when you're playing super heavy Snorlax and you can like wipe your board of 2 prizers, a lot of times you can just like win the game that way. But if you have a bit of a slow start, like I don't know, it's a really weird matchup. It can definitely go either way. Temple doesn't affect you as much, which is really nice because you can still like you can easily attack with anything. You're not reliant on single strike energies. And if you want to one shot a Guard EX, you have Drapion and Weird Deer as options, which like they're not amazing, but they do work. Kind of better than T-Tar in their own ways because you're not like milling a ton.
Right.
So you have like a lot more resources, and then also if you're playing MewEX, you do have the potential threat. Like if you're going first, you get the turn 2 double Archeops. There's like the one turn where they have like double Curlia, and if they have Greninja and no Manaphy, you can just like win a game that way.
Right. And then if it is a single strike Lugia, it basically comes down to is the Guardy playing Temple primarily? Is that right?
I don't know. I think that's just
It's a
match.
weird one.
Temple, yeah.
That matchup I have experience. I don't have the colorless, but the single strike build, I think Gardevoir is pretty favored against the single strike build. Now, as if you're playing Temple, you are 100% heavily favored. If you're not playing Temple though, just really hard for Lugia to win. Like you need to not have like Luminion in play basically, and then B you need to be able to find bosses on the turns you need it, which can be really hard when you're getting like Iono spammed. So it's rough for Lugia, I think in general. Gardevoir just like trades so favorably into Lugia that I think that matchup is favored for Guardy. The colorless build though, like Piper was saying, I think all that's definitely true. The setting up the single prizers with the Snorlaxes, Temple not being as effective against it, I think is I think that might be a little better for Lugia than the single strike version. Funnily enough, even though the single strike version has more like dark Pokemon, you would think it would be better, but it doesn't seem that way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Jesse, I want to ask you one more question about Miraidon. Pikachu, Flying Pikachu over Zeraora, those were kind of one of the big differences, I think, between your list and Adam's list. I'm assuming you're still good with Flying Pikachu, and I'm going to say the reasons, you tell me why I'm wrong. Is it because of the ability to possibly steal a turn and you can V-Star power with the item, the tool?
Yeah, it's less for the Thunder Shock. You're never even looking at Fly. Just pretend the Fly is not on the card. You're never going for that ever. Maybe sometimes Hail Mary against like a Lost Box deck, or if you're in just a but even that doesn't matter. But yeah, you play it for the fact that it's a free retreat Pokemon that is also a V Pokemon. So those two things together are both like very, very valuable and give you the strongest turn ones possible, because you get like you don't have a whole lot of like 5 spots, like you fill those up really quickly,
Right.
Miraidon. So being able to have something you can, because a lot of times you don't want to get out Raichu out right away. Most times you don't. So and you could put the Forest Seal Stone on Raikou, but then you can't put Charm on it. So you really want to be like pop something out with free retreat with Tandem Unit, and then also be able to slam a Forest Seal Stone onto it.
Mhm.
So those two things just make your turn one so much smoother, and they give you room because you need to have room for the Squawk ability, and sometimes even for Luminion if you really like want to have the highest chance of turn one attack possible. So those two things are reason enough to play it. But then you do have the Thunder Shock and the Fighting Resistance. The Fighting Resistance is very good against Urshifu because it's just a Pokemon you can throw
Right.
up that can't get one shot by Gale Thrust, and they can't take like a 3-prize turn by KOing that in a single prize Pokemon as easily. And then you do have the Thunder Shock, which can just like win you games on the spot. Like against Gardevoir, it can turn an unwinnable game into like a winnable game because you get an extra turn of Dynamotor. And a lot of Gardevoir lists don't play any switch cards, so you
Right.
flip a heads on that, and you just like could win. I mean, that's won me games before. It's also very good against Arceus is already very favored, but technically it's really good against Arceus too. It's good against Urshifu because lots of times they just play the one rope. It also fixes math on 330 HP Pokemon because it does 20 damage, so it puts them in range of a 5 energy KO with Raichu with Zapdos in play. It also one-shots Remoraid's if you have the Zapdos out with the Thunder Shock, which you can do a lot too, which is
Oh.
kind of funny. So yeah, it's just like it serves a lot of purposes. At first glance, it seems a little troll, but it's like it's definitely I think like way better than Zeraora
Okay.
in a lot of situations, just for that Forest Seal Stone and the free retreat.
So I take it you're still playing it in 151.
Yeah, that's been something that is like I'm not sure. Like I think it might be correct to play Mew EX and Flying Pikachu V because just one, it's extra good starters, and two, you just need to have a free retreater that you can tandem unit out. You can't rely on Mew EX because you can't tandem unit Mew EX. So yeah, I don't think it's just a blanket like replacement. Although it's hard to say though because the Japan list didn't play it, so like maybe you don't need it. But that's something I'm been trying to figure out, and I don't know. I still like the Flying Pikachu VLI. I think it's really good still, just for those reasons I've stated.
Did the Japanese list play Zapdos? Because that like is kind of a pivot, right?
Which
Yeah,
one? The
it
new one? Yeah.
What, Zapdos EX? Yeah, it's kind of awkward. Like it is a free pivot, but obviously
Yeah.
you need to have energy attached to it, and like every energy is like super meaningful. So yeah, that I guess technically that can be the free retreater, and then like eventually you do get the Mew EX out. Like eventually you do get it out. It's just like Rhydon's all about that turn one, and you just want to you can't rely on that being like your free retreater, and that can mean the difference between a turn one attack and not being able to move your guy. Not having to find a switching card or manually attach to your active. But yeah. So technically, the Zapdos EX does have that ability.
Yeah.
If it has energy attached to it, it can retreat for free, which is kind of cool.
Zach, what is the highest placing Alakazam EX deck going to be at Peoria? Top 512? Top 256?
I mean, I think top 256 is just making day 2, so I'm gonna cut that out. Like, I mean, someone could do that. I mean, I think like as regionals grow larger, there's enough opponents that you could hit where they might not understand kind of like a half like controlish deck. I haven't played with Alakazam EX too much, so my correct answer is going to be sub 512. I think that's what I'd say. If you're an Alakazam lover, that's sick. Shout out to you. Best of luck.
Does anyone believe there will be an Alakazam in day 2?
No.
Big sad.
Fortunately, no. Yeah, no.
Okay.
Probably not.
Sorry, Alakazam EX.
There might be a Radiant Alakazam in day 2.
There you go.
It's not happening.
There most certainly
I'd
will be
shocked if
a
there
Radiant
were no
Alakazam in day 2.
Urshintels.
Surely a
as
Rapid
cool as
Strike.
as cool as Alakazam EX is, it's kind of just like a glorified hit and run Pokemon.
Yeah.
Right, it's a bad strafe, and it's a stage 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's nice because I mean it's a little better than a hit and run because like you don't have to keep finding cards to move it in and out of the active. But then again, it's a stage 2 Pokemon, so it's like
Right.
if you can set up a clean board with it, then maybe it's strong. But Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, the
I
consistency.
just don't even think there's enough
constant.
good cards around it, right? Like I think if we had some
Yeah.
other really cool cards, like I go back to like when I played Hitmonchan and expanded, at least you had cool things to stick in front.
Wheezing or something.
So until we got more, right? Like we need something, and right now we just don't have it. So I think Alakazam could grow as the format goes on, but Peoria would be a tall order. Also, I was looking online. Alakazam EX is one of the more expensive EXs out of the sets, because we haven't got those promo boxes yet.
Really?
So it's not $1. I was looking at it was like $8.
Let's go. 'Cause I
Pretty
pulled one.
expensive when we think about the average card cost nowadays.
Yeah, it's like $6. That's wow, just for the base.
That's what I'm saying. That's way more. I thought it would be a $2 card, but
I think Alakazam needs like two things to be viable. One is a leafy camo poncho for EXs, and two is a tankier safeguard Pokemon. Because the issue with Mimikyu right now is you can just get Mew EX'd, which like not good.
Alex, if for a lot of people they're going to Peoria, this might be the first regional. They've been waffling on decks. What's a good safe play if their goal is, I just want to, maybe day 2, maybe we'll say top 256. I want a top 256. What's a good safe deck for that?
Depends on like your own skill level, but like I think
I'm a player who wants to top
playing, like,
256.
Right, like a Miraidon or a Charizard or a Lustina probably is like the most likely to have just a hot run. Like you could just hit good matchups and just run over everything.
Jesse, what deck should someone play for top 256?
For new players, and I get asked that a lot just from like locals when I go, because I try to go to my locals as much as I can. But I've always recommended Lugia because I think the power level of the deck is just very, very high for the amount of little effort you have to do to get it rolling. And it is just a deck where, I mean, you don't necessarily, I mean, there is a lot of nuance to it, even a lot more than what people think. But I think the deck is just very, very strong. I mean, play the single strike version or the colorless version, whichever one you like better. I think Lugia is just always like going to be very, very solid.
As someone who got that advice and took that advice for the last event, I would say you need about 30 games to get used to it, how it sets up. Someone in my skill bracket there. The first couple turns can be a little bit, it's not like hard to understand or anything, but you got to get used to it.
Yeah.
Piper.
Yeah, I think Miraidon or Lugia, if you want to get like a little bit more like skill based, I think Urshitel is a pretty good meta call. Like if you hit matchup roulette, you could just go like 9-0 or something if you just hit a ton of good matchups, and yeah. I don't know.
Zach, what do you think?
I think Lugia Single Strike or Charizard Arvin. Those decks probably have a pretty decent chance if you set up, get okay with the coin flips and decent on the matchups. Those decks naturally have a like power level that can carry pretty much anyone. And especially if you play them with if you play them pretty well, I think those two decks could go pretty far in the event.
Okay. Now, we have 2 questions left. This one, I'm going to start with Jesse and just go around. And I want the best Lost Zone deck, but you can't say one that's already been said. Jesse, what is the best Lost Zone deck for Peoria?
So I can't say Turbo Lost Box.
You can say anything. You can say Turbo.
Oh,
you're first,
I'm
so you get.
I'm stealing that one for sure. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna say Turbo Lost Box with a Shaman V in it. Honestly, I think that yeah, I mean, I personally feel like that Arvin Zard deck is pretty difficult for Lost Box to beat if you're not teched for it. You just, like, again, it's like the new Arceus deck. It's a huge stat check, but instead of there being a 280 HP two prize Pokemon, there's a 330 HP 2 prize Pokemon. So it's a big guy. You could also play the less of a bad starter if you do start at the Tropius, which punches Charizard pretty hard for 240. But I don't know. I feel like I like the Shaman V a little better. One, because it's a Forest Seal Stone target, and 2 because it's a you can actually one-shot the Charizard at some point, whereas the Tropius just hits it for a lot of damage. So yeah, I would go with Lost Box Turbo Lost Box.
Okay, and you're putting grass attackers in it.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
For the herbs and
Honestly, I
spices.
think Charizard's gonna be people like you said. People love Charizard.
Yep.
It's a meta deck. People were a little disappointed that it wasn't like tier 1 when it first came out, and now people figured it out. So yeah, I mean, I think Charizard. I think you gotta be ready for that deck for sure.
Zach, what's the best, other than Turbo, what's the best Lost Zone box deck?
Well, okay. I'm gonna go with Lost Tina. I think that Lost Tina arguably has the strongest Charizard matchup. Sorry to Piper and Alex because your pickings are slim at this point.
Still Sables.
I mean, there's still Mimic. I won a challenge with Mimikyu, Earther, and Sealstone, so you could pick one of that one, guys. If it gets down to that point. Yeah, Lost Tina seems like it has a pretty decent matchup spread. It's kind of middle of the road, but its Charizard match peaks pretty decent. So yeah, that's a good one. Lost Turbo is also really good, so I like Jesse's choice. And
right, it's the point. It gets harder every time. Alex, you're up next. What's the third best one, or the best?
Can I say Kyogre? Like,
sure,
it's basically Turbo, but it's Kyogre, right? So
right.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Kyogre.
That's a good one.
It is a great one.
Just play the Turbo 59 and add a Kyogre, play a 59 card deck. Yeah.
Would you, if you had to choose between Turbo and Ogre, which one would you play for this event?
Oh, Turbo for sure.
Okay.
I think Kyogre, your Charizard matchup is not great. I would rather be playing Turbo that's more like focused on taking knockouts that matter. Because late game Kyogre, Charizard's not going to get hit, so...
Does your 59 or 60 have grass in it?
Wait, what? Oh, sorry. I thought you said mine.
You cut out really badly.
I said, does your 59 or 60 have grass attackers in it?
They've been floating in and out.
Okay.
I think we're gonna make that decision based on like if we think single strike Lugia matters. I think we got the Charizard matchup down anyways without grass types.
Mm-hmm.
So I think single strike Lugia is gonna be the do I care?
Okay. Piper, slim pickings. What do you got?
Lost Zone Charizard EX. You take a pretty good matchup into all the other Charizard EX decks because they put pretty bad 2-prizers on their board, and you get free knockouts in the early game. You can Sableye in the late game. Sableye is a very good card. Yeah, I don't know. You have a bunch of broken attacks throughout the game for like really easy to do, and yeah.
Okay. I think we did shout outs at the beginning, am I right? We did. Okay. So we're going to end with the question I always end with. What is the best deck that you will not be playing? 100% I'm not playing it, but it's the best decks of all the decks that I know I am not playing. Piper, you can start.
Like probably Lugia or Tina. I don't know.
Okay. Jesse, best deck you will not be playing at Peoria.
Oh boy. I'm just gonna go out and say Gardevoir.
All right. It's a good one. Zach.
I just think it's really hard to win, but it's hard to it's hard to play for the sole reason it's hard to play 3 games or it's hard to play in a best of 3 meta. It's very difficult. You have to be like firing on all cylinders and be like or manipulate the clock. You have to choose one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So.
All cylinders or no cylinders.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say who's playing 3 games with Guardy, but playing in a best of 3 and playing a best of 3 and finishing a best of 3 are different. Yeah. Good. Zach, what's the best deck you're not touching for Peoria?
Gardevoir is a good answer, but I don't want to get into that conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Lesage and you get into that conversation, it ends bad for you. Anyways, I think I'm gonna go with Control.
Oh no.
Control seems really good, and I think that it's probably broken, and it's just a deck that I have not put enough effort into. I don't think I'll be able to get it down before.
When you say control, are you talking about that one that was like Evil Tall and Fira? Like, I don't know what control it looks like. Right now.
I think there's like a handful of different control decks or control elements that are going on right now. So I don't necessarily have like a concrete 60. I do have a couple control decks built. I don't think I'll be able to settle them before the metagame comes down to. So I think like I just have a pile of cards that somewhat resembles a deck, and it's not 100% where I want it to be yet.
Control
so
pile.
that's a deck that I want to be playing, and I'm thinking about it in the back of my head, being like, I wish I could play control, but I'm probably gonna end up playing something dumb like Lugia.
We like it. All right, Alex, bring us home. Best deck you will not be playing.
I'm gonna say Gardevoir. Only reason I'm not saying Lugia is because I think Lugia is kind of mediocre anyways. And so like I won't be playing either of them. But Gardevoir is probably like the actual good deck that I won't be playing.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time. This was really fun, really good. And good luck to everybody at Peoria. See you.
Thank you.
Thanks.